Greetings and salutations, my dear audience. This is Joe St. Eggbenedictus coming at you with a video on the SBL Study Bible, which is the new Revised Standard Version Updated Edition. Going through it this year for devotionals and wanted to bring you all the updates or kinks or idiosyncrasies or victories or non-victories that I see within the book. First thing I did was begin my year by reading the Gospel of Matthew. And reading along, and I have several comments. The first thing that really wanted to hit on was a change in Matthew 28, and then just a general comment about the Gospel of Matthew in general. But first, I want to give a shout out to my pal Mike, to all the visionaries and mystics out there. Thank you for joining me. I'm grateful for you being here. Read through Matthew 28. I don't think anything else stood out per se regarding Matthew 28, aside from some comments I have about the study notes, and of course the ghosting, but that's another story. And then I get to Matthew 28, last chapter, and I get to verse 17, and the NRSV Updated Edition says, "When they saw him, they worshipped him, but they doubted." Now, I've preached on this verse, and I'm always used to preaching that it says, "But some doubted." So when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And when I always preached on this verse, I always contrast those who worship, but even in the company of believers, there are some who even bring their doubts to worship to God. And I think this is very affirming. I've always used it as a very affirming, inclusive text. So when they took the some out, I said, this makes it say that they worshipped him, but they all doubted. So it doesn't hold the worshipers in contrast with some who doubted. It basically says or implies that they all doubted. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this, so let me see what happens or what this says. So I went back to my first stop is the NRSV to see how it translates it. And again, the NRSV, which I've used for 20 some odd years, does say, when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. That's where I get that particular preaching point. And then I went to the King James Version, which is kind of my primer or go-to for these things. And in Matthew 28, same verse, in the King James Version, it says, let's see here. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. So the NRSV, for all of you naysayers out there who think it's such a terrible translation, follows very close to the King James Version. In fact, 9 times out of 10, when there are little idiosyncrasies like this, the NRSV does follow the King James actually quite closely. And in some ways, in this case, for instance, close to where it doesn't really give what might be the actual rendering. I looked it up in the Greek, and it's oi de edistasin. Destizo is to doubt. So there's no some. I think there's a word for some, like, I think it's like Allah, which is many, maybe. But this is, and they doubted. So there's no implication that only some of them doubted. It's they worshipped and they doubted. So I think the NRSV Updated Edition actually gets it more accurately than the NRSV 89 edition, and more accurately than the King James Version. I wonder if the King James folks were uncomfortable with a majority of the disciples doubting, so maybe they threw in some to differentiate between maybe the assumption that not all of them doubted. But nevertheless, when I looked at my Greek, there's no some in here. And this is from the King James Version, Textus Receptus. So that's where it stands. I thought that's very interesting. Now, just another comment on Matthew. As I'm making my way through the SBL Study Bible, one of the things I really do want to mention is that I think that it would be more accurate to call this not a study Bible, but an annotated Bible. These are more annotations than study notes. If you were to rate them on a study note kind of grade, it would be a C-. If it's annotations, just like the Oxford Annotated or even the old school first or second edition Oxford Annotation, I think it matches up really well and it compares really well, though I do prefer my Oxford Annotated more so than this one. In the Gospel of Matthew, what I've noticed is that the study notes are more cross-references. They give more cross-references in the annotations than they do study notes. In fact, I had been frustrated time and again in my reading of Matthew when I was going over it, because most of these notes are just cross-references. So whoever did the annotations for Matthew, I think stuck more closely with cross-references than they did explanation or points of study. Now, currently, I am in the book of Hebrews, and that seems to be a lot better. The study notes are actually study notes. A little bit. I would still say that this would be more accurate, and I think that more ingenuous rather than disingenuous if they just called it an annotated Bible. Because even though the book of Hebrews is way better than the notes in Matthew, again, Matthew just being basically cross-references mostly, I still wouldn't say that it's a study Bible. Even some of the I do like the insets, by the way, and they would be so much better without the ghosting. And I do like insets, but I was also reminded at the end that there are no maps with this. No real essays at the end. There are essays at the beginning. By the way, I did a review of this. I just wanted to tell you, I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. So all the essays are at the beginning. But even then, it's no match for the Oxford Annotated Study Bible, 4th and 5th edition. I went back to the Annotated Study Bible, 4th edition, which I have, and I use every week. But I went back to it to look at it more closely, because when I use it for my sermon prep, I only use it for my sermon prep. But I took it home. I wanted to spend more time with the 4th edition Annotated Oxford. And I tell you what, it does not. It's so good in every way. The paper is holding up. It's been, I think this is I want to say this is the 14th year I've had that particular edition. Again, if you go back a few videos, you'll see me compare this with that Bible and the New Interpreter's Study Bible. So really, if you're looking to buy a Bible, I would shoot for the old Oxford Annotated Study Bible, 4th or 5th edition, and I still wouldn't get this until they get that ghosting right. Some people really swear by this, but I want you to know that despite my criticism of this is still a very good Bible. I think it's sound for scholarship. I think it'd be great for seminary students and people who are more into higher criticism, which I am, but even then, I think they have a few kinks to work out. And just very interesting about Matthew 28 overall, and how all that works out. I do love the color scheme, by the way. I think that's great. It's much more easy to read, and I love the headings more so than the Oxford Annotated. So there are some strengths. They just got to get the ghosting right, and I'm confident that if they hear their constituents, the publishers, they'll return to it and maybe improve on the paper quality somehow. That's my hope, because I can barely get through this in a sitting without these notes. The little notes are almost impossible to read with the ghosting and the current font size. So a lot of things to work out, but that's to be expected with a first run of a Bible. And this is my 2 cents. Thank you for joining me, and we'll talk to you later.